So I got cut and I decided, okay, well, I can't play baseball anymore. I'm going to go and take a karate class. So that's kind of where I got started.
Are you looking for a way to drive growth, sales, communication, and retention in your academy? Kovar Systems 6-month Program Director course is designed to help members of your team thrive in the important role of Program Director. With step-by-step training, we will cover a wide range of topics, including prospect follow-up, overcoming objection, and securing enrollments. Our program will teach your team members to effectively communicate the values and benefits of martial arts, which can be a game changer in securing more enrollments at your academy. Our next 6-month course starts on this date, so don't wait and visit our site www.kovarsystems.com to get your team enrolled in the upcoming course. Again, that's www.kovarsystems.com. Enroll now and get ready to see some real results in your business.
Welcome to the Satori Lifestyle Satori Masters Podcast, the ultimate resource for ambitious, hardworking school owners that want to get their business and their life to the next level. My name is Dave Kovar. I'm a lifetime martial artist, business owner, speaker, and author. My goal is to empower listeners with the knowledge and the tools they need to break through barriers and really get their business and their life to the next level. Thanks for watching and enjoy. Welcome to the Satori Masters Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kovar, and I'm really excited about having my good friend, Master John Bussard, to join us today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be here.
All right, man. Yeah, well, thanks for being on the show. And I know you and I go way back. I think we met 30 years ago. Does that sound about right? Mid-90s?
Yeah, about 30 years ago, 94.
Yeah. And we were both only 8 years old at the time, I think.
Close to it anyway.
Or in hindsight. Yeah. Well, so, hey, man, right now, Master Bussard has 8 schools in the Maryland area. Is that right? And
we have 8 that we own, and we have 1 that we license.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and you've had all kinds of iterations. You were up to 14 or 15 pre-COVID, and so what I'd like you to do is kind of first off give me a quick background. Like a lot of guys like myself, we were how do I say this? And I don't want to basically didn't have any other options. College wasn't working out for us, so we did martial arts. So you're a pretty educated guy, but you chose this over other professions. And kind of give me your background about what got you into this and some of the stuff that you learned.
Well, I guess from the beginning, what got me into martial arts was the television show Kung Fu. I'm dating myself on that, but when I was in middle school, that was big. Loved Kwai Chang Caine and everything he could do.
Note to audience right now, Master Bussard is letting us all know he's very old if he remembers that, but so am I, so it's all good. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's where the idea came from. I just thought, wow, this, he's a skinny guy, doesn't want to cause any trouble from anyone, but he also isn't going to let anyone push him around or push other people around. It got me into trying martial arts, right?
I got to just share one scene. I'll never forget this. That really did it for me, because that was it too, is that some guy was in a bar and some guy had a knife and he kicked the knife and it stuck in the ceiling and and I remember thinking that was it. That's what I knew I wanted to do, martial arts.
Yeah. So that kind of, I didn't start training at that time. I was still young. I did all the sports, baseball, basketball, football, that kind of stuff growing up. And as I got older, it was something I always wanted to do. And, something that's kind of funny. I look back on it now. When I was in 10th grade in high school, I got cut from my high school baseball team.
Okay.
And baseball was my first love, and I was really good at it, but I was one of those late bloomers. I hadn't grown yet. And my high school coach told me he didn't think I could hit the pitchers. So I got cut. And I decided, okay, well, I can't play baseball anymore. I'm going to go and take a karate class. So that's kind of where I got started. And I was very, I've been lucky pretty much my whole life. I don't know why, I have this golden horseshoe up my butt, but for some reason things turn out well for me. And that moment of pain turned into a great career journey as I, got started in training. My teacher's name was Ki-Wong Kim. He was, he was the highest ranking Korean instructor in the United States. In the DC area, there was Kiwon Kim, Kim Studio, and there was Junri Institute. So between those two, they sort of, dominated the area. And I ended up at Kim Studio and, trained there for 13 years. Mr. Kim was sort of like Mr. Miyagi to me.
Okay.
He was,
Okay.
very philosophical, taught a lot of great champions, but he was a terrible businessman. And when I started working for him, I had graduated from college. I was in my mid-20s, and I knew I wanted to teach martial arts. So I started working for him for $600 a month gross income at the time, which was $7,200 a year. That was in the late 80s. And he told me, well, let's just do this for a little while, and eventually I'll pay you more as the school grows. He had 2 locations. Well, the schools never grew. 3 or 4 years later, I was still making $600 a month. I was approaching my 30th birthday, and it just got to the point where I couldn't live like that anymore, and I had to leave. We kind of mended fences, and then he passed away in 1993. When he passed away, I was actually not doing martial arts at the time. I had went out and got a job selling insurance, life insurance for Mass Mutual, and I hated the job, but I really learned a lot during the year and a half that I did that. I learned how to dress like a professional. I had to put on a suit and tie every day. I learned how to conduct myself in a business setting, how to make those difficult phone calls and those type of things, because, in cold calling, it's
Right.
It's not fun. But every day that went by, I just had this yearning that I wanted to open a martial arts school. So I was recently married, convinced my wife to, give me a chance. She did. And she basically gave me 1 year to see if I could make it. So I found a place. I was extremely, again, very lucky. I found a school that was an Arthur Murray dance school where they had outgrown it. And it was 2,000 square feet. It was a perfect size for a school. It was already built out. It had these polished wooden floors. It had mirrors on the wall. It had an office. And again, I didn't even know how lucky I was until, years later when I actually had to pay for a build out.
Right.
So, I was just very fortunate. And, in 1994, when I opened that school, that was the same year that the Power Rangers took off. So, I was inundated with phone calls to teach little children. And the school where I came from, we didn't teach little kids, that was just not something we did in those days. So I had to develop a program to teach the younger kids a new belt system and that type of thing so as we run a very traditional karate / Tang Sudo type of program because my instructor was Korean. But just to tell you a little bit about Mr. Kim, Master Kim learned in Japan prior to World War II from one of the original Okinawan pioneers. There was Gichin Funakoshi and some others. One of them's name was Toyama Kanken. Toyama Kanken founded Shudokan Karate. Grandmaster Kim he was Korean, but he went to college in Japan. So he studied under Toyama Kanken and then went back to Korea after World War II. So Toyama Kanken is my martial arts grandfather, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is that's why Tang Sudo forms look so similar to like Shotokan forms, right? Because interesting.
Yeah, same roots. So that's kind of where it started, and and then as I one of the things about being local to DC, I was friendly with John Coquinos of Educational Funding Company. And through a mutual friend, I had met John, and he knew that I wanted to start a martial arts school. And he was very kind to help me out, sort of take me under his wing, gave me all the Kovar products that were in the EFC manuals back then, and the Tom Callis introductory lesson and all of those trade secrets back in the day. So that's how I got my start. And and the first school opened in 1994, and it's just been, a roller coaster ride ever since.
I have a couple observations. First off, when you say I've always been really lucky, but also the fact that yes, you've been really lucky, but you're a smart guy and you've worked hard, and of course that comes into play. But I think what is really important is that your belief that you're lucky. In my opinion, that really makes a big difference. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because you just kind of assume things are going to work out. And because of that, even as you go back to when you first opened you had to quit the job because you weren't making enough money, and you did life insurance, which at the time seemed like the worst thing possible. But man, it makes you really appreciate what you did. You learned a lot. But the fact that you look at it that way means your unconscious is always kind of looking for the good of what's going on. How can I benefit from this? On a kind of a cellular level, which really a lot of people aren't wired that way. So I think that helps a lot. The other thing that I just wanted to say, I remember the first time, my first memory of you was at probably, I don't know, mid 90s, 95, 96. I don't remember, but I think you had 2 or 3 schools at the time. And there was a breakout at an EFC, like a convention. And my memory serves me, it was actually in the DC area. And I remember sitting down, and there was a table of 15, 16 guys. And I think I'd maybe seen your picture in the all-star list. And I remember just go, where'd this guy come from? All of a sudden you had 3 schools and you're doing really well. And remember having a conversation, go, man, this guy's going to go places. He's a sharp guy. So, and you certainly have.
Thank you.
So you're growing. You at pre-COVID, you were up to 14 locations.
Correct.
And I remember I gave you and I were at a member solution event probably a decade ago or something like that. I don't know if you remember, but you were like flying high. And I remember telling you, you're the #1 school owner in the country right now. And you were like, don't tell me that. I wanted to strive. I wanted to be the guy that was striving to become the #1 person. But you're certainly at the near or at the top of the pack as far as people that run a successful school. And what I mean by that is, of course, profitable, quality martial arts, and just having an amazing reputation in the area. So tell me what you've learned, and I know, share us a little bit about your experience with Harvard Business School and what you've learned since then, and how you're running your school differently now than maybe you did 10 years ago.
Okay. Well, I think, first, Harvard Business School was something that, again, I just sort of fell into. My good friend Tule, him and I were both running multi-schools. He's in Virginia, I'm in Maryland. We would get together every couple of months just to have lunch and just sort of chat. I'd find out what he was doing. He'd talk about, what I was doing, and we'd sort of compare notes. And he had gone up to Harvard Business School and taken a class, and he had come back, and he was trying to get admitted into their one of their programs that leads to it doesn't lead to a master's degree, because Harvard Business School doesn't do the only way you can get a master's degree is to go and spend 2 years in a row there, right? You have to go up and enroll in their business school and do that. But for executive education, they have several programs that will get you alumni status. And one of those was the program for leadership development. So Tu had applied a couple of times. He wanted to introduce Harvard Business School to the martial arts. And so he asked me to go. And initially, I was almost 50, or I might have already turned 50 at the time. And I said, Tu, I'm just too old. I can't go back to college. And he said, no, he's like, there's a lot of executives up there are older than you, you should try it. So I went up there and took a class with him. Loved it. And the thing that I really loved about it was the way that the classes were taught, because when I was in school, I wasn't very good in school.
Okay.
And it wasn't school itself, it was the way school was taught. Okay. And when we went to Harvard Business School, it's the Socratic method of learning. So basically what happens is you read a case, on any sort of business topic that they have, and all the cases are written this way. You go back, they ask you lots of questions in your discussion group, different ways to think about this. What would you do if you were in this situation? How do you think so-and-so responded? Would you have done it differently? Those kinds of things. And you sort of form an opinion. So then when you get to the classroom, the instructor, the teacher, the professor, they stand down at the bottom. You're sitting in this sort of movie theater like venue, but it's circular. And, they ask questions to the group, and this discussion starts going back and forth. So there were a lot of times where I went into the class having one viewpoint, but after sitting there and listening to the other people talk about it, my viewpoint might shift completely. So the way that it was conducted, I was able to gather and learn so much. And it was much different than, reading a book and taking a test on multiple choice, or, true or false, that kind of thing. So just the whole method from a business standpoint, we grew organically from 1994 up until really up until the pandemic. We were growing. Sometimes we would open a new locations. Other times we would expand a location. So we might have 2,000 square feet at a location and say, you know what, we're wall, have 2 classrooms running. But it seemed like every year we were doing something to grow. So that was just a plan. When the pandemic hit, it really changed the plan. But before I talk about that, I want to say that prior to that, I was really, really struggling. So we were growing and growing and growing. Social media was growing, as you know, and
Right.
I had almost, I don't even want to say almost, I think I was addicted to growth. I was addicted to opening new locations. And it wasn't a positive addiction, it was a negative addiction. It was something that I enjoyed doing, but I was doing it at a cost to our business. Some of our staff members were put in positions where they weren't ready. They were sort of forced to grow whether they wanted to or not. And it made for a culture that wasn't great. The people weren't very happy. And it was just me pushing, got to open the next school, got to expand, got to grow, that mindset. And it got to the point where mentally I was burned out. I was frustrated. And about 6 months before the pandemic hit, I had actually taken a sabbatical. I had said, I can't do this anymore. I need to take a break. And then shortly into my sabbatical, before I was ready to come back, the pandemic hit.
I want
And
to
then
I want to stop you. I want to stop
development.
you for 1 second. I don't know if you remember, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And for those of you listening, John and I have been good friends for a long time, and we chat recently. You're better at reaching out than I am, I think. But but I remember we had a conversation where I said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be opening up any more schools. Do you remember this? I think I'm done. And you wrote this articulate, like 4-page note to me about how important it was that we keep growing. But so it's interesting how I think I was where you were prior to pandemic. It was like, okay, man, then you think, this is getting pretty heady. So anyway, continue on.
Yeah. So, and what happened is I built this monster. I've got 14 locations, and there was literally a point in time where I just stopped and I said, okay, I've got these 14 schools. What the heck am I going to do with them? Am I just going to keep running them? Am I going to be able to sell them? What's my exit strategy? Which is, again, something that they, when I went to Harvard, one of the things they talked about was a business life cycle, that most businesses are built, they grow, and eventually they're either sold or they die, and they have a life cycle. So what was my end game? What was my strategy? Was I just going to do this until the day I died? Was I going to be able to sell it? Who was going to buy it? How was that going to work? And I realized that I had kind of overcooked things, and the pandemic, while it was hard, was actually a mixed blessing for me, because I didn't enjoy getting sued by several landlords, and I didn't enjoy losing 50% of our students and the accompanying revenue that went with them. But it allowed us to negotiate with our landlords. And one of the things that happens when you're growing multi schools, and this was something, and I know you guys go through this as well. We're in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, and within the suburbs, there's lots of towns, lots of cities. Some of them have great demographics, some of them have decent demographics, and some of them have poor demographics in terms of being the best place to run a martial arts school. So right. When once you when you first start, you kind of almost have to go wherever a landlord will take you, right? But as you start to grow and you get a little bigger, you can be selective. So you can, they start to want to recruit you. And so you start to go to these really great demographic areas that are just home run locations. And then after you kind of go to a few home run locations, you realize, well, there aren't any more home run locations. The rest of these locations just aren't as good. Either they don't have the population, or they don't have the annual or the average household income you want, or the number of kids, or whatever you're looking for, they just don't have it. So we started opening in cities and in communities that weren't necessarily the best. And of course, we still were doing okay pre-pandemic, but we had some schools that were extremely profitable, and then we had some that weren't as profitable. And a lot of it had to do with where those schools were. So, when the pandemic hit, we were able to go back and, in essence, look at it and say, okay, these locations that are really good, when we come out the other side of this, we want to keep these, but these that aren't so good, we want to get rid of them. And with the help of a bankruptcy attorney and a lease liquidator who worked on my behalf, we were able to negotiate our way out of several leases. And we came out the other end. I sold one location to one of my former employees who'd been with me since he was a little kid. And we have 8 locations that are doing extremely well. And we've worked on some things to really improve those locations. And so, I don't know if this is Kicks Karate 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0, but whatever version we're on now is a much better version than what we were 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's remarkable to see how you continue to evolve and shift and focus. And I know now that your wife, Lana, who's an amazing gal and is kind of the CEO of the company now, has really taken a different perspective on things. And was she the one that really pushed you guys to go be more, paperless and cashless, et cetera? Is she the one, or was that something you both kind of agreed upon?
Yeah, I think, well, Lana definitely played a part in it. She really, when I went through that time where mentally I wasn't, I just wasn't able to run the schools anymore, she took over the day-to-day operations. And what I mean by that is she was speaking with the managers on a daily basis. She was making a lot of the decisions that we were doing. And my focus during the pandemic, when I came back, was lease negotiations. And, I'm talking to the attorney all the time, and I'm dealing with the courts and all of those things as we're trying to get through, put out some of those fires. But one of the things that I've kind of felt this way for a long, long time. But, you have to do what you can when you can. And, when we started, we ran ads in the newspaper, right? That's right, the way we advertised. There wasn't another way. But over time, things have changed. And one of the things that really changed, and as far as what I was looking to do, I told you this a few weeks ago, I have a video, and it comes back on my Facebook memories once in a while, of about 15 or 20 of our staff members all standing in front of a mirror, each one repeating our introductory lesson, basically giving an introductory lesson to no one. And I'm walking around and I'm checking everybody. I'm looking at their energy level, and I'm looking at what they're saying and making sure that they've got it memorized. And one of the things that really bothered me was how difficult it is for each and every employee, each and every staff member to be good at doing an introductory lesson, and whether it's your phone script or your introductory lesson or your enrollment conference, some people are comfortable asking people to pay. I've had many people through the years that weren't comfortable with what we charged, and they had a hard time asking people to pay that. So what I was always looking for is, what can we do to make the staff member's job easier?
Okay.
So if it's, we can find a way that they no longer have to teach an introductory lesson, or they no longer have to answer the phone, what is it that we can automate? And I guess the old school thought on this would be, instead of having 20 people learn the phone script, what if you had an 800 number where people could call for information, and you had maybe 2 people that worked at that, that only answered phones, and they set the appointments for your entire company throughout for all your locations. Because some people are really good at it, and they have that great personality that people just feel good when they talk to them, and other people don't. Other people come across the phone, they may be friendly in person, but when they're on the phone, they just don't have that presence, that personality. So what we started to do was we started to look at the systems we created to run our schools, and we tried to automate them to minimize as much as we could the responsibilities of our employees. So if there was something, if we looked at, here are the 10 things that the employee has to do each day. Well, if we can take 1 or 2 or 3 of those things away from them and automate it, that makes their job easier. It also makes them happier, because a lot of them don't want to do it. So we tried to make those things easier, and and we can talk about the details of that as much as you want, but that's basically what we've done.
So you've really streamlined stuff. I know that contrary to a lot of people in the industry, you don't put a lot of emphasis on retail, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's kind of like, hey man, how much time do you want your people selling a $2 mouthpiece, right? And how distracting that can be for other things as far as inventory. And so let's just take the retail piece now. So how have you restructured that so where it's not an important part of your business, but it's allowed you to be more successful?
Yeah. So what we did is we said, okay, the only 2 things we're going to stock at the school are uniforms and t-shirts. And other than that, any sparring gear or other items that the student may want, we use Century Direct. We have the person, it's on our website, so the person can go right to our website. They can click their size, click whatever they want. Century drop ships it directly to them. It never enters our school. We don't have to handle anything. Our staff doesn't have to go in the office and spend 10 minutes, on an order. They order everything directly. Now, we make a lower percent when we do that. But what it did was it does a couple things. We make less money per item, but now we're not stocking anything. And the square footage of my storage space cost me just as much as the square footage for my mat space when I'm teaching. So I want to utilize, and again, this was one of the things that I sort of looked at, if I have a 3,500 square foot school and it's $40 a foot, that's a lot more money per month than if I have a 2,000 square foot school at $35 per foot. Yep. So we wanted to, that was kind of where it started, is let's maximize the space within the school. That's our, one of our biggest expenses is rent. So I don't want to waste a lot of space for seating areas or fancy fountains, or even dressing rooms. We've gotten to the point where we said, hey, that's not a necessary thing. Let's do it just like baseball or basketball. When they come, they're ready to play. So the students wear their uniforms. They come ready to participate. And we sort of, we're able to shrink down the size of the space that we were looking for whenever we were renting a space. So, that's kind of where it started. And then we've done everything else, with retail. That was, again, get rid of the school store, so to speak, get rid of that, make them order it online. Okay, we're not going to make as much money, but we're also not going to lose anything. There's nothing that gets ruined. There's no theft because there's nothing to steal.
Right.
But it's very simple, and it gets shipped directly to them. We still get paid, and our instructors don't have to sort through boxes. They don't have to hang anything. They don't have to do any of that. And really, the way that and here's the other thing. Back when we used to do retail was less than 3% of our total income, less than 3%. So I looked at that and I said, I don't want our staff members to spend their time on that. It doesn't generate them. What generates the revenue is the math.
Yeah. And then also you're spending time away from serving students when you're dealing with retail. Like you could be having an important discussion with a parent about their child's progress, but instead you're trying to size somebody else's new foot pads, right? So no, I get it, man. And all of a sudden you can get by with less people because you don't have to man that front desk to the same level you did before.
Well, I mean, think about this, and this is where I think people step over dollars to pick up nickels. If you're running a school and you're charging them, let's just do some easy math. If it's $200 a month and they come 8 times, every time they walk through your school, they paid you $25 for that class. So that's, yes, you have to pay your instructor, but if they're teaching 10 kids in that class, that 25 times 10, that's $250 that you made for that class. And then, if you paid your instructor 25, now, you subtract that, the only thing you have left is rent. When you're dealing with retail, if you sell something for $20, it costs you 10. So you really only made 10 anyway. And then when you subtract what got lost, what got broken, what got ruined, you're not making 10 anyway. So it just didn't make a lot of sense. And so that's kind of the way that we've looked at every aspect of our business from, we stopped teaching introductory lessons, which was, like I came from 3 lessons for $19.95 back in the day. And then we said, way back then we looked at it and said, we don't really need 3 lessons. The person's ready to enroll after the first lesson. If we teach a really high quality lesson. And then actually, this is one of the things that came out of the pandemic. During the pandemic, once we were able to reopen, we looked at it and we were only allowed to have a certain number of people per square foot in the building. So instead, sort of out of necessity, we said, okay, instead of teaching introductory lessons, we're just going to invite people to come and take a group class.
Right.
So, now the instructor would ask them to come a couple minutes early and they would chat with them a little bit, but they would come in and take a beginner class. And through that process, we eliminated the introductory lesson and the students, would enroll anyway. So there's so many, I can't even mention all the things we've changed.
What you've done such a good job of that I'm always impressed with your operation. What you're doing is that you're never, you've done a great job of not cutting the ends off the ham, so to speak. And those of you guys that don't know the story, I won't go into it. The bottom line is you're always questioning what you're doing and how you can do it better. And I know it's hard to do, especially when you've been in business as long as you have, because it's kind of like it's hard to combat that voice in your head that says, well, we've always done it like this, right? But that can be a really costly mindset. And I know that I see it in our organization. We, especially, and because we both have similar sized organizations, it's sometimes hard to shift the momentum of a big location because you got a lot of moving parts and there tends to be a certain, well, this is how we've always done it. Why would we change it? And you've done such a good job of always questioning, is this the best way to do this? And is there a better way? And if so, let's test it. So, okay. Have you done much? Okay. Do you do much testing or do you roll something out at all the locations or do you try it at one location to see how it works? What's your thought process on developing a new system? Let's just say somebody wants to try something differently, look at their business model differently. What would you recommend to them?
Yeah. If they're dealing with multi-schools, the simplest way to do anything is to test it at one of your locations to, see if it works. work out all the kinks, make sure that it's functioning correctly before you put it into 3 or 4 or 5 locations. The other thing is it gives you the proof. Once, some people are very reluctant to change. So if you try it at one location, the best thing that you can have happen is the person who's running that location talk to the other people. So it's not coming from me or from Lana,
right.
And they say, oh yeah, this is great. We're not teaching introductory lessons anymore, or, everybody's enrolling on the app now and it's so easy. And then the other guys go, oh, that sounds great. I can't wait till they let me do it. So from that aspect, it just makes the most sense. And of course, if you try something and it doesn't work, you haven't done it everywhere. So that's definitely something I would recommend.
Very cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time and your friendship. What would you say to some guy that's out there that's struggling, trying to keep pay the rent and trying to keep the lights on and kind of having a hard time and finding their way? What were some basic things you tell them to do?
I think most importantly would be to focus on their classes.
Okay.
Because if you're struggling, again, depends on your location, right? If you have to look at so many variables. Where am I teaching? I know when I started out and had my very first classes, I was teaching in a boys and girls club. So the space wasn't always clean. It wasn't as nice. But if you're in a commercial school, you want to make sure that your school is clean and presentable. You always want to be, very friendly with everyone that you meet and interact with. And kind of the key is that if you teach good classes and you treat people well, number one, they'll come back and take more classes. And number two, they're going to tell you their friends about it. And that's the best way to grow. So that's what I would tell them to do, and focus on that, and just, forget about if you see the ads out there that, grow your enrollment by 100 people in 3 months, that's nonsense. Don't pay attention to that. Just focus on, grow by 1 or 2 a week and just consistently do the things that are going to improve your school.
It's amazing to me. Great advice. It's amazing to me how many people are looking for the next shiny objects. The sexy thing is going to give them a bunch of students. And you've heard me talk about this before, but you just kind of summed up really the 5 mindsets that I always talk about. Number one, we're the friendliest place in town. We're the cleanest place in town. We only teach great classes, never just good classes. We're excellent at student-parent communication, and every day we look for opportunities to enroll new members. It's like it's a simple formula, but at the end of the day, it works really well. If you can just stick to that, man, I tell you. And then sometimes I also see where people, they work really hard for 3 or 4 weeks, they don't get the results, and they kind of shut down for a while, and it's this never-ending cycle. And it's kind of like you got to show up consistently over time, and especially on the days you don't feel like it, and then inevitably you don't get as much done maybe in a few weeks as you'd like, but over the course of the year you look back and you've made great progress.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, well, Master Bussard, I so appreciate your time and your friendship, and thanks for being on the call with me, on the show with me, and you have an incredibly great holiday.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Are you a martial arts instructor looking to improve your teaching skills and build a strong team of future instructors? Well, look no further than the Satori Alliance, an international association of martial arts instructors. Our mission is to positively impact the global martial arts community by establishing a shared level of martial arts instruction, professionalism, and continuous learning. With our instructor certification program, you'll gain the confidence, communication skills, and classroom management techniques to run a professional and well-run martial arts floor of any age group. We invite you to schedule a free consultation with one of our program directors who can evaluate your instructor team's size, schedule, and training content. We'll outline the Satori Alliance master steps that have helped build and maintain strong teams of instructors. To learn more about the Satori Alliance and schedule your free consultation, please visit our website at www.thesatorialliance.com/podcast. That's SATORIALLIANCE.com/podcast. Join our community of passionate martial arts instructors today.
Thank you for tuning in today to our podcast. I hope you found it valuable and inspirational. To stay connected, please subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you go for your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's show, please give us a 5-star review. And we really sincerely would appreciate some feedback. Your feedback helps us to create high quality content that will help others in the future. If you'd like to follow me, you can go to Dave Kovar on Facebook or Haunchie Dave Kovar on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next episode.